Welcome to Overtime on Inferno, your weekly roundup of all the big stories in CSGO, quicker than I get rid of co-hosts. Quick reminder to rate and review us at the end of the episode, it really helps us. I'm Logan. Elliot is not here this week. He is sick with a throat thing and talking hard. I don't know. A couple things about today's show. First of all, we got a really cool interview that Elliot and I have been waiting for a while um, for today. We have Ryan from Rushby Media on to talk about Twitter and Counter Strike and North America and how North America is going to look after COVID. A quick preface to this interview: I recorded this interview and I used the microphone on my headset. So I'm going to sound a little weird. Ryan sounds fine. Excuse my idiocy. Without any further ado, Ryan from Rushby Media. I'd like to welcome Ryan from Rushby Media onto the show. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
I'm sorry for dragging you out of bed at like 8 in the morning.
Yeah. I should be awake. That's part of that time.
So Elliot's not with us because he's dying with throat disease. I don't know what he's doing. It's whatever. He can't talk. He can't talk, basically. So I have questions from him. So I will be the message of Elliot here. So we've got some North America questions. We have a lot of North America questions, actually.
Oh man!
Right.
All right. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
you brought on the one guy.
Well, that was the plan. So, do we think that Bad News Bears getting picked up is actually realistic in a post-COVID Counter-Strike landscape?
In a post-COVID Counter-Strike landscape, yes. In the current environment, I don't think it is. There's no incentive, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. There's no lands. There's no activation. We can't be doing sponsors. We can't have a greater kind of visibility onto the jersey sponsors, things like that. Leadify really going out of their way. I mean, they've already made some inroads and some breakthrough. People recognize that brand a little bit more. It's more of I guess, like, at least in my knowledge, like, it's more of a thing that's here. And I like, if there's anything from Leadify that I see, like, I'll go for it. I follow them, stuff like that. You can support it the way that you do. I think salary expectations are harder, right? Like, you look at some teams, like you look at teams like Extremum, who get paid probably like $15K a month, and they like went 3 months without playing an official. Like, any investor or any organization can look at that in the current Counter-Strike community and be like, that's not a thing that should make sense. Like, I should pay people to not do anything. Even Extra Salt, like, as much as they play, right, them not going to Blast because Pain Gaming beat them is obviously a huge hit, like, just in terms of sponsors and marketing and things like that. So when we look at the post-COVID world, we have to see plans have to come back. We have to see more NA involvement from tournament organizers. And then at that point, it kind of becomes feasible. So there are several steps to it. I think it is. It's definitely just like a troubling thing right now where the entire market for at least NA teams is Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, and then it's like, who else is out there, right? Not a ton of people are getting a ton of money. And sometimes players have salary expectations that sometimes might be too high. So,
yeah. I think at this point, actually, it's probably Liquid, then Extra Salt, then EG.
It's fair enough.
We do a lot of shitting on EG on the show, so this is nothing new for the rest of us.
Good. All right, good. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're technically an international team right now, so.
Well, yes, they are a European team. What is it? They only have one American on the active roster.
They have one American and one Canadian. Yeah.
I'm over it. Yep. I'm fine. I'm good mentally. I'm fine. I promise.
Okay. So I'm like skipping around on these questions. So do we think that Counter-Strike events in U.S. arenas, so like IEM Oakland and IEM New York, ESL One New York, right? Those big like arena events that we had are still going to attract enough fans in the U.S. to be able to happen? Like, will current people that are watching Valorant that have like moved over to Valorant, do we think that they'll? No. Okay.
No. I mean, the IEM New York contract right now So as far as I understand, there are not going to be any more IEM New York events. That's done. The IEM New York that happened on the last one that happened online,
Yeah.
the reason that it said IEM New York was because they fulfilled the sponsorship obligation to have the IEM New York. There's no IEM Chicago. There's no IEM Oakland. The DreamHack Atlantas are a staple, but like now we see that ESL is kind of reverting with DreamHack, things, all these kinds of changes. If they're going to have any events, it's purely to fulfill some sort of meaningful obligation of adherence to the scene and supporting it that way. I mean, you lose a lot of money anyways when you do in-person events. The numbers just don't add up.
Yeah.
You're not getting a bunch of return. A lot of it is just sponsorship obligations. Like that dominates the majority of these LAN events. And then obviously the entire idea of competition and the betterment of that. But I mean, if you could just have LANs inside of a studio where tournament organizers could handle all the costs and not have to pay for the rent, like can you imagine renting the Brooklyn Arena, like the full Brooklyn Arena for like
Renting
3
Barclays,
days?
Oh
is
yeah,
insane.
It's insane.
It's a crazy amount of money. It doesn't bring in any ROI. It's purely just to get more eyeballs on things. And then the question becomes, how much more of the marketing is there? Does that ain't really worth it? If we do it in the EU, how much more of a return can we actually get? So just a lot of different questions and aspects there. But I'm nervous about it, especially now when you have a lot more people and a lot of the, unfortunately, you had a very solid tier 1.5 base of NA move over to Valorant. Valorant just kind of owns it right now. Like you have an event for Valorant, and I'm sure that you could attract. Like if you had a Valorant event along a CS event at the same time, it makes perfect sense. You would probably get everything. You'd have a lot more engagement. But just standalone CS:GO, it's very unviable, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Valorant, but not in like a specific Valorant way, right?
All
So
right.
Valorant has been expected to become a closed circuit, right?
Right.
To say the day that Valorant opened, everyone went, okay, this is going to turn into League. This is going to turn into 10 franchise teams in North America, 10 in the EU, 10 in China, 10 in Korea, etc. The way that League currently runs the World Championship stuff, right?
Right.
Valorant has been expected on that. So do we think that Valorant, the pros are like flocking to Valorant and stuff because and the US is so good at it because we expect it to become this like closed off thing that only 10 teams will be able to participate in?
I think the reason that people are flocking to Valorant right now is because of how open it is, and they know that Riot is such a involved developer that the amount of support that Valorant has instantly gotten has been huge. It's been tremendous. Riot has the game came out like a year and a half ago, and it's already become a very well established circuit. And I eat a lot of my words on it. Like they just fully came out and were able to create an entire tournament structure. They have a very well organized structure all across the different regions. And NA players are going to it because organizations get comfortable with Riot as a developer. They know what to expect. They know what's going on. And if they know what they're to expect from Riot, at least for now in the open circuit, then they can go and establish themselves and make themselves be a competitive Valorant team. Once they do that, then they gain the Valorant following, they gain the edge, so that when they go apply eventually for these closed leagues, they already have like look at all the leverage that we have. Look at the dedicated fan base that we have. If you don't bring us on, like what gives? All the NA players see this, they see the involvement, and they say, oh, well, if I can ride this out, if I can make myself one of the best players right now, the second that it does become into this regulated thing, that's when the money 100% goes up, because at that point organizations know, hey, we're now committed, we're able to support bigger salaries, we know for certain that we'll be able to be in this, we know for certain that there's going to be these prize points, we know for certain that there's going to be XYZ coming into this. So once that comes into play, then you have a lot more stability for players that haven't had necessarily the stability for the longest time. I also think that you're going to see a lot of players get cut out.
Yeah.
Right. You're because if you have 10 teams,
yeah,
and it's going to be 5 players to a team, assume maybe 6. So you only get 60 of the best any Valorant players, but then you have to look at EU imports, which is what League of Legends did. It's likely going to happen in a post-COVID world where you're going to import EU players. You're going to, you're saying that the 60 players, maybe let's say 50. Let's see.
50 of them
Actually, I'm
are.
going to lie. 45 players. Let's say 45
All right.
North American players are going to be in a closed circuit Valorant league. That's, I mean, it's a decent amount of top players, but you might see some players come back to CS:GO at that point, right?
Yeah.
If they're not going to be able to get onto a top League of Legends, top Valorant, a closed circuit Valorant team,
Yeah.
right? Like if then it's like, hey, we can possibly go back to CS:GO and we have this open circuit and there are events competing, and if we can get a team together, maybe we can get,
Yeah. I mean, we kind of saw that happen with Daps. Daps coming back to Coach EG is that he got taken off the top team, one of the top teams in Valorant.
Yes.
Came back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players sometimes like Valorant, but sometimes they actually hate it and they don't necessarily want to be part of it. But they're there because the paychecks are good and the paychecks are steady, right? Yeah. So I mean, look at Floppy as well. Floppy hates. I mean, Floppy's such an interesting character to begin with. I mean, I think he's been a victim of burnout for like at least a year before he said that he's been burned out. I think the Colossus actually final was the nail in the coffin there, and then him trying to go to Valorant was just this like last ditch grab at seeing if he mentally could do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, no shame to him, like mentally. Like for me to play like 10 years of MDL and then in a whirlwind 24 months go to established team Cloud9 Major Colossus. I'm playing in Europe. Cloud9 Valorant. I'm one of the like.
Yeah,
it's wild. So I think there definitely will be changes in the next like year or so as I think things kind of get finalized and we really see who's in it and who's not.
Yeah. Okay. So Counter-Strike right now, I think both of us would agree is EU centric.
Yes.
Everything happens in EU. The best players are in EU. The best teams are in EU, and I'm grouping CIS into EU for this matter.
Okay, right? Sure.
They're across the pond from North America, I think is what I'm kind of saying, right? Why was North America throwing in tier 1.5 CS and are now absolutely winning in everything in Valorant? Like, why?
Wait, are you talking about like the actual match fixing or
no? I'm talking like why was North America tier 1.5?
Because the best players from Europe didn't move. The best players from Europe didn't move, right?
So it's just North America has no competition now?
Yes. The best players from Europe did not move. You didn't have a simple move. You did not have a Zaiwu move. You had literally
like all the biggest move was Nitro.
You had the entire no, you had Ethan.
Yeah.
Ethan moved over. Steel moved over. These are top IGLs. These are top players from North America that had to go. There was no more money. It was over. In EU, there is money. In EU, there is a system. There is a support. You don't have a core of players suddenly immediately migrating at the top of their game or even rising stars. Look at Curry. Curry, who was on the Triumph, he was on all the Premier teams, and now he's on T1, which we can talk about T1 Valorant. I don't know how much I hate it. Just the whole thing is a whole mess over there. But he's in college. And he's pausing his studies, and the only reason that he could pause his studies was because his parents said you have to get a real pro contract and you have to make XYZ amount of money, and that's the only time that we will allow you to pause your studies. And so he got that from T1 for Valorant, and he's like 18 and he's one of the best players, like rising stars in all honesty, in my opinion. But that was the situation here. You didn't have that with Europe, so that's why NA is just so much better. Because everyone else just literally is.
All right, so I feel like in the next year or so, that if Counter-Strike starts dying, that North American dominance goes away.
But only if Europe goes away. Again,
only if Europe goes away.
There's the concept of Counter-Strike dying, but the Counter-Strike isn't necessarily dying that much in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Like European teams are strong. CIS teams are even stronger. Like, you have the only real regions that are facing such kind of struggles is Asia, Australia, and North America. Brazil is even big.
Yeah,
Valorant is a sizable portion in Brazil, but like
it's still
incredibly popular. So it's really Brazil and EU are the dominant forces that continue to drive things forward.
just feels like 4 years ago. Um, how much do we? So I have some Elliot very specific questions now.
Okay.
Which are so. How much value is there to North American players in moving to Europe early on to pursue a career in Counter Strike?
Not early on. I mean, how well define? I mean, I guess it's hard to figure out. Like, what do you
I'd
do
say
early
I'd say
on?
early on, like you approach FPL at that point, and like you've dedicated to going pro. You're in FPL. You've shown you are existent, right?
Right. Well, I don't think Europeans want Americans. Like, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't think they want them. I think there have been plenty of Americans that could totally have gone over into Europe and play, and I just don't think that there are European players that want to play with Americans. And I think that is a stumbling block. I'm sure that there are. I mean, the question then becomes like, how cut out are you for that to permanently move over into Europe to do this? Like, we have some EU players. I mean, look at Cirque, but like Cirque goes back to Bulgaria all the time, and I also am amazed at the fact that he's like still in an NA team. I would have thought he would have bolted for the hills for EU the second that any of those teams came calling, which teams have. It's just like he's in NA, and it's hard. He's a young guy.
Yeah, I think he just turned 21 or something. He's really young still.
Yeah,
He moved when he was like 17 over here.
right. So it's crazy to me that players like that. That's a very rare case. It's an off case. You don't have, at most, you have European players coming over for a year, maybe, if that. Like, you don't have constant EU players like living here. I don't know what the case is with Mihu as well. Like, I don't know if he's stuck in Europe. I don't know if he's in Europe or if he's coming back to NA or if he comes back to NA only for events. Like, EG had that boot camp out in Monaco, which, first of
That
all,
yes,
sick,
yeah.
very sick.
I think you and I are both F1 fans, and that's like
Yeah,
that's sick.
it's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't think that, like, I think it would be viable, but I just don't see the reception from European teams to even want Americans. So I think that is the first stumbling block. There isn't the same allure, right?
Yeah,
Right, with oh, hey, we're an NA team, and our big secret now is that we're going to get this European player. It's like, whoa, okay, now we're serious. But it's like, hey, we're this EU team. We're going to pick up this American. It's like, what are you doing? What? Why? You have so much talent here. So
I mean that's what we said when Twist moved over to FaZe.
Yeah,
I think
well,
that's
Twist moving over to FaZe, Twist literally had to be one of the best players in the entire world.
to do that. Yeah,
Right,
that was the only possibility.
right. So it's like, what's going on? How is it? And then even then, FaZe didn't have to pay a buyout essentially.
Yeah, because
It was
he
just
said he wanted to leave, right?
He's like, I'm leaving because my girlfriend is in Germany, so I'm gonna be here in Europe, and like that was the deal. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. Guess we figured that one
out. What do we think? We've talked a lot about issues with North America today. I feel like that's a recurring theme at this point.
Shocker.
Yeah, really. What do we? So, this is a two-part question. So the first is, how do we think a culture of changing players regularly, moving players in and out of North American teams every 5 seconds, has like screwed over NA forever?
Yes.
Okay.
The first solution always has been, hey, we need to change these players. There are few teams that change, and the few teams that change are successful, right? Mm-hmm. Bad News Bears, Party Astronauts are the amateur teams that do not change players, and they are widely successful. They are the top. Those two teams are the top premier teams. They are literally on that cusp. That's it. That's the like they are on the cusp of it. They deserve their recognition. Party Astronauts, I know the team very well. I know the coach very well. I know their philosophy very well. They really try to make things work inside of the game rather than making changes. In terms of player personnel, it's much harder to have someone come in and to relearn the entire culture, relearn the secondhand nature of how you play. Rather than just saying, okay, hey, maybe we need to switch positions here. Maybe we need to come up with something. Maybe we just need to take a mental reset. Or maybe, as is all natural, with everything out, we have bad luck, or just stuck in a bad run of form. It's natural. It happens. The first thing should just be like, hey, maybe we just read this out a little bit. Not, oh, we lost 2 in a row. It's time. It's time. It's like, I don't know. It annoys me. It annoys me so much.
Yeah. And so going into that, right? What do we think the biggest hindrance to Counter-Strike having a new the question is worded on getting a new golden era in the US, and I'm not sure that there ever was a golden era in the US other than like the Liquid Grand Slam run, which I'm not sure if that was a golden era.
No, I would say late 2017 to early 2019.
Okay.
Or like mid 20. Well, yeah, the IGS was when 2019. That was like mid 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think kind of like once that happened, that was kind of the nail in the coffin. I think that's probably the era that we'll talk about most. I mean, NA teams were incredibly competitive at that time. Cloud9 obviously winning the major. Liquid was a dominant team as well. You had Brazilian influence helping push teams kind of get better and better. I think we idealize. I think there's a lot of nostalgia or a lot of reimagining. Like what NA Golden Era was when you look at like iBuyPower and the old Cloud9, just because they were like, oh, they streamed, oh, they have personalities. Oh, I remember gambling all of my goddamn skins away on these weird illegitimate sites, but it was the fun thing I did when I was 15 years old, and now I'm 21, and it just doesn't hit the same. And it's like, yeah, because you grew up to be 21.
I feel like I'm being personally attacked here.
But it's like, listen, sometimes you don't have the same nostalgia when you look back at it and you reimagine things in your head because you think it was so much better. It's the same way that like you'll play an old video game and you're like, wow, these graphics
sucked. And it's like you remember it was like these were amazing.
Right. And that's what I think a lot of people do. Right, they weren't the best back then. One of the best teams. I mean, even during IGS, Astralis was the best team, but they were going through who God knows what was happening with them, and they just weren't going to events, and it was like, So like,
everyone was taking burnout breaks at the same time and stuff.
Right, so it was like Liquid won it, but then after the time, it was kind of like, okay, now Valorant's here. People are already switching to Valorant. They haven't even like gotten real teams. There's no real tournament structure here. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I have non-Counter-Strike related questions.
Oh, let's go.
Twitter.
Yes. Oh, man. What are we doing?
You're known for shitposting on Twitter.
Yes, I am. Which is funny to be known for that now since, well, I guess I always did it.
You're known for shitposting about non-Counter-Strike things on Twitter as well, so much so that I've gotten people who don't care about Counter-Strike to follow you just for shitposting.
That's really funny, actually. That's great. I enjoy that. Yeah, that was a big change. It was a big change, actually.
So what's your favorite thing that you've ever, like, had a conversation with, like, done on Twitter?
The top 3. Okay, so there's, like, the top 3 things, right, that I think everyone that follows me and the cult of personality that I have.
Okay,
which, again, really fucking crazy. I think the fight with with Regina, which was I got reported.
That was the senator,
it was a failed congresswoman. Who was in Florida. She didn't have power. She contacted the FPL Circuit account on Twitter. I saw it because someone that runs the Face It stuff saw it, sent it to me, was like, haha, look how funny this is. And I just was like, this is going to be great. This is going to be a great thing to do. I'm hungover as hell. And then we just got into a fight. And then I got reported to the FBI, and it was really funny. So that was a great thing to ship us about. I enjoyed that one. And then there was I blew a tire on the Pennsylvania. Yeah. And someone comes, and I make a joke going to PennDOT, the Pennsylvania DOT, Department of Transportation, and I was like, fix your roads. Someone was so angry that I would even suggest such a thing that they went into my DMs and had a full dissertation about why I was wrong to tag them and how it was federal highways. But he was wrong. And it was just a great thing to talk about there. I'm sure I think there's another, I know there is one more that like people bring up and think is relatively funny. But I think it's just funny now. I think now my favorite thing is the anti-vax stuff. I do a lot of political talking. I mean, I went to school for international relations. I've always been involved with politics. I was an economics student as well, and I was involved with politics at my local level for a long time. So like I know that, and so it's funny at this like level to kind of like shitpost about it well and do that. There's also just like the regular shitposting of just everything. I mean, anything of your life, of things that happen. The beer thing is also hilarious. If I just
the beer QR code thing,
just incredible that I've been able to like just turn things into anything. So yeah, those are some of the favorite things. But yeah, I think now most of the stuff is just the anti-vax things, which has permeated into our world of CS:GO Twitter, with several people coming out as not anti-vaxxers. They're not against the vaccine. They have questions, and they're honest questions, and they want to participate in an honest discourse. And it's like insane. So
yeah. I wanna talk about the most recent thing that's happened on Twitter, the big thing.
Okay.
The Astro thing.
Oh my god. What a loser, dude.
I know that you weren't super involved in that, right?
Fucking loser. No, I was on a okay.
You were at the end.
I was at the end. You know, I was at the end because I'm at a baseball game on a date. Okay, on a full date.
But this is important. Hold on, this is important. You're in New York. What baseball game were you at?
The Brooklyn Cyclones.
Okay, that's acceptable. Okay, please continue.
So the Brooklyn Cyclones, I had planned this date for like at least 2 weeks. There were vegan food options, and she's a vegetarian, so I thought that was a solid play. And then for $45 a ticket, you would basically be able to go into the outfield seats part where they had a bunch of pop-up breweries just handing away beer for free, and you got to drink from 30 minutes before the game
until the end of the
seventh inning.
Okay, yeah.
And you just got to drink for free. So we're out there, and all of a sudden, I just see Twitter blowing up. And she sees me go on my phone, and she's like, "Are you on Twitter?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just had to check something." She goes, "No, we're on a date. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, right. My bad. Sorry." I just could not participate at any point in that thing. Like, just...
So we've shitposted on Envy a lot on the show. We've been doing this for 9 months now, right? We've talked a lot about Envy, like weirdly a lot for how little they actually.
Envy's not relevant anymore.
Well, that's the problem, is they've never been relevant, and it's just we've talked a lot about.
Disagree. They won a major.
Well, I'm talking about the North American Envy.
Fine. Yeah, absolutely the worst.
Yeah. And because of we've talked a lot about like Calyx and Mihu, how we don't know anything about them because Envy was just a black hole of time that was spent somewhere, right?
Calyx won FPL all the time. God, what a goat. My goat.
So it's like you had Calyx on Space Soldiers, and then you have him now in Eternal Fire, and there's nothing in between. Because basically Envy just never existed.
Just a black hole.
Exactly. They played like 4 matches. Like that was it.
It was really funny.
And the same thing with Mihu. He was on the end of the Virtus Pro thing with Pasha and Neo, but like also not Taz, and the weird time there. And then he was on no team for a while, and now he's on EG. It's just that's how it happened. Exactly. So when we saw the Hasher thing go up, my roommate also helps out with TLDR, and I was like, yo, you're not gonna fucking believe this, man. And I literally just sat there reading the whole thing, and I could not believe what I was seeing. I was like, yes, you might have the best Call of Duty team currently, and you might have gotten to finals in Valorant, but like Siege, Counter-Strike, like there's a more first-person shooters other than just like COD and Valorant.
The whole thing that's crazy to me is that he was like, "Yeah, fact check us, we're the best in history."
Oh my god!
And Donish was like, "Okay," cool,
and then he did.
You're not. And it was just like, "Hey, I know I said I want to be fact checked and be challenged, but I actually don't want to be fact checked and challenged for statements I make on Twitter. So instead of just completely ignoring what you're saying, I'm now going to have to take this to heart. And I'm going to have a weird personal reaction to this." It was like, whoa, dude, log off. Just should have logged off after that first tweet of just being like, the first one was like, fine of like I think the first one was a challenge of just being like, hey man, we want to make, you're just a hater.
Yeah.
Like, fine, you're an owner. You can chalk this up to like, I'm doing a personality thing.
Yeah.
Got to do the ego personality thing, which I do a lot because it's easy to do just for like the attention and the whole game of it all. And he would have been fine. It would have been great.
Yeah.
But then saying crawl, like comparing him to a cockroach is the dumbest thing you can do for an individual who is like semi well known. I would say Don is just semi well known.
Yeah. I'd say especially in where that tweet got, he's well known.
Yes. But also, like, no one ever has an issue with Donish. Ever. Like, is he abrasive sometimes? Yes. Love him. He loves to argue. I may have had a problem or a hand in that. But, like, it was the dumbest person to pick a fight with. It was just the dumbest person to pick a fight with. And it was incredibly funny. And the double downing for, match fixing. What? We can't support them. They made a mistake in CSGO. So does that mean that they shouldn't have to face repercussions? It was like, what is happening here?
All right, so I got two more questions, both related to Counter-Strike. First one, I want to talk about the Valorant press conference that happened, that they asked about the match fixing.
Yeah, Mikau. Love that guy.
So they asked Marv about the match fixing, and then they just kind of like, hey, we're not talking about that. And then just moved on like that, right? How, like, I assume you have more information than me because my information's about zero, right? Because I don't get kept in the loop on North American Counter-Strike. I get kept in the loop on EU, but I don't get kept in the loop in North America. But, like, this ESIC thing is fucking huge.
Yes.
Right? Like, and this is gonna mess with a lot of things. And so,
well, like they said, they have about 33 active investigations into players right now. I personally know of, I think I have a pretty good idea of who the 33 individuals are. Like, some of them are gone. Some of them are top players. And it's a very delicate investigation. Because obviously all of the NA journos talk together.
Yeah.
But I mean, the ones that have known and do know about this stuff, like, we've been asked to just hold off because ESIC is doing what they're doing. And anytime that we potentially let things go public, we might not do it in the best way. We might be missing out on information. It might not be exactly right for us to be doing things like that. So ESIC has to be given the authority and the respect to be able to actually hand down these decisions, because if we turn it into a media circus, what does it actually accomplish rather than the organizations that are going ahead and actually doing it? So it's been hard sometimes because we can look at players, and again, as Richard Lewis said on his stream yesterday, that Marv is an individual or a person of interest. So I guess I can feel comfortable talking about that. I really try never to name it because it's not appropriate. And as much as I ship us and as much as I joke about things like that, like when dealing with situations like this, I try and be as professional as I can and be as back office as I can. So it's been wild, but looking back at that press conference was incredibly funny because it was so widespread and it's so well known that individuals are potentially caught up in ESIC that it's impossible for any players not to know.
Yeah.
And so the question is a very valid question. The behavior that MBE players did was fucking insane. Besides Mark, I think Crashies was an individual that also was like, who said that? And I think he was like more shocked from the question because they weren't expecting it at all. Rather than being instantly like villainous of retribution, it was more just like, what is happening? Who is that?
Like, who decided to ask this question? We're going to the finals. Who's asking us about Counter-Strike match fixing now?
Right. And I think it was more of like, this is a crazy thing that's all of a sudden happening right now when we were not expecting it at all, rather than I want to find out who this is and blacklist them forever. And Miguel has been super, super on the ESIC train, talking with them. I know he's talking with them a lot. He released this amazing article that I helped talk with him about. That was put into WAPO. he's great. He's a great journalist. And I've been able to talk with him a lot. So I think that he's like, I'm very excited that he's here, and I'm excited to hope that for the next year he gets nominated as one of these sports best journalists, because he really is, and he's really elevating what our scene is.
All right, I have a gut reaction question, and then you got to get going. So,
Probably.
gut reaction.
It's gonna work.
Yeah. I gotta go.
That's why I'm wearing this. I've got to go inside of an office in New York, baby. You're getting me up right before my time.
I gotta go to class after this, so I'm not in a much better place. Okay, so gut reaction. Nades being able to be dropped in Counter-Strike, good or bad? Okay,
good.
Okay,
I think it's
awesome.
Good. I think it'll be interesting. I won't even have to explain it. It's good.
Awesome. You can find Ryan at Ryan at RushB Media, at Ryan at RBM on Twitter, and you can find his writing at rushbmedia.com. Thank you for joining. Well, me. I would normally say us.
Thanks so much for having me, man.
Thank you for Ryan for coming on to the pod this morning. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at RyanAtRBM, and he find his writing work and other people's writing work that he does things with at rushbmedia.com. Make sure to follow the rest of us on Twitter at LoganRamp, at AZEsk, and at ReadTLDR. We will be back next week, and hopefully I'll have a co-host again. Other than that, have a nice day.